Topic 5.
Marco geográfico, histórico y cultural de los países de habla inglesa. Aplicación didáctica de los aspectos geográficos, históricos y culturales más significativos.
1. Introduction. A. English in the world. English is considered nowadays lingua franca. It is the language in which nations carry out their economics, political, technological, academic and cultural transactions. At present day, English is the official foreign language to be learnt at the primary education stage in the Spanish curriculum. It is the dominant official language in over 60 countries, it is present in every continent and is the official language for trade and business, especially due, as David Crystal mentions in his work English as a Global Language, 1997, to the expansion of the British colonial power in the past and the emergence of the United States of America as the leading economic power of the 21st century. Recent studies suggest that English is spoken as a first language by 402 million people approximately, and it is used by more than 1.000 million non-native speakers. It is estimated that this number will continue growing at least up to 2018, when it is thought to will be learnt by 2,000 million people as a second language, as the British Council suggests. B. Relation to legislation. According to the current educative law, LOMLO, we should teach not only language, but also culture, in order to be respectful and tolerant. According to Primary Education Objective D, when teaching a language, teaching culture is also essential. The reason for this is to understand our own culture and language in a better way, because as Johann Wolfgang van Goethe said, those who know no foreign language, know nothing of their mother tongue. Besides England and USA, English is also the mother tongue in Ireland, Canada, Australia, New Zealand and South Africa. It is an official language in India and all the countries that once belonged to the Commonwealth as well. I will now draw a geographical, historical and cultural outline of the 5 most outstanding English-speaking countries, the UK, the USA, Canada, New Zealand and Australia, as it would be endless to talk about all the English-speaking countries.
2. Geographical, historical and cultural overview of the English-speaking countries. The United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. The United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland is made of 4 countries, England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. It is a member of the Commonwealth and the European Union, although this situation will soon change due to the Brexit referendum that took place during the summer of 2016. Its capital is London and its currency the sterling pound. The UK is a constitutional monarchy, with 2 legislative houses, the House of Lords and the House of Commons. The Chief of State is the Sovereign, nowadays Elizabeth II, and the head of the government is the Prime Minister, nowadays Theresa May, who became Prime Minister after David Cameron resigned in the summer of 2016 after the UK voted to leave the European Union. The UK has a varied geography, going from the mountainous Wales to the hilly Northern Ireland. As regards the people, the population in the UK has undergone several changes and from the 50s on has increased a lot due to the inflow of people from Commonwealth countries, especially from India and Pakistan. Referring to language, the official one is English, although there are lots of different varieties and dialects, ex-Yorkshire or Northumbrian, in addition to other languages such as Welsh, spoken in Wales, and Gaelic, spoken in Scotland. From a religious point of view, the UK is mainly Anglican, and most people belong to the Church of England, although they coexist with Catholics, Muslims, Protestants, Jews and other religions. Education is compulsory from the age of 5, and the educational system is quite similar to the Spanish one, with nursery schools from 3 to 5 years old, primary from 5 to 11, and secondary from 11 to 16. There are public schools that are very exclusive and expensive, and totally private. And then, on the other hand, there are state schools. In opposition to what happens in Spain, there are not semi-private schools. Children must wear a school uniform both in the public and state schools. They give lots of importance to music, creativity and learning through discovery. This way lessons are very experimental and want the children to find out things by themselves. There are national exams, called SATs, that test the students' level in maths, English and science, and the results are published in national newspapers for the whole country to know the school standards. As regards culture, the cultural life in the UK is the English one, although Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland share that culture with their own traditions more related to the Celtic culture than to the English one. It is a very traditional country talking about celebrations and ceremonies, like for example a wedding, a funeral or a Christmas meal. In reference to sports, the national sports are football, rugby and cricket. They are very supportive with their teams. Manchester United or Liverpool are two famous football teams. It is also very important the pub culture, a place where friends can have a drink and chat. After 1945, some important changes took place in the UK, especially due to the emergence of Liverpool and London in the 60s as centres of world popular culture in terms of music, the Beatles or the Rolling Stones for example, fashion, and the hippie movement, with Carnaby Street as a good example, focusing in history. It is important to point out that England has suffered a great number of invasions. Stonehenge remains are an excellent representation of the earliest inhabitants of Britain, the Celtic people. Then, the Romans invaded Britain in 55 BC, imposing their way of life, language and political organization, until the invasions of the Angles, Saxons and Jutes in the 5th century. In the 8th century Britain was invaded again, this time by the Vikings who built walled settlements called burgs, nowadays usually spelt borough, which is one of the commonest endings to place names, like for example Edinburgh. Later on, after the Battle of Hastings in 1066, the Normans whose leader was William the Conqueror introduced their feudal system, in which the absolute power of the kings was increased, until King John was forced to sign the Carta Magna, an important symbol of political freedom. The beginnings of the Parliament are found in the reign of Henry III, John's son. Afterwards, the 100 Years' War fought between England and France had a devastating effect on the English economy, and led to the Peasants' Revolt. After the War of the Roses, 15th century, where the House of Lancaster and the House of York fought for the English throne, the Tudors became the ruling family of the country. As a symbol of the unity between the houses of York and Lancaster, we have the Tudor Rose. The most outstanding Tudor was Henry VIII, who established the Church of England with the Act of Supremacy, 1534, by means of which England would not obey the Roman Pope anymore. Henry VIII's daughter Elizabeth I, was also very important because she restored the unity of the country. Her reign is considered by historians as the Golden Age, with writers like Shakespeare and Spenser, and also because of the prosperity of the whole nation. The Stuarts James I and Charles II, convinced of the divine right of kings, ignored the Parliament, and finally a civil war took place in England, 1642, until Charles II restored the monarchy in 1660. Next, in 1707, England and Scotland were united by means of the Act of Union. In this period, the Enlightenment, many important changes in British history took place, like the loss of American colonies or the Industrial Revolution. In 1914, Britain entered the First World War as an ally of France and Russia, and then in 1939 the UK entered the Second World War. After the war, the Irish state became the Irish Republic and left the Commonwealth. In the 1973, the UK joined the European Union, though they do not have converged into the unique currency, the euro. In 2016, after the Brexit referendum, the British population has voted to get out of the European Union, still with lots of controversy. In 2001, following the September 11 attacks on USA, Tony Blair offered a strong support to the campaign against international terrorism. Unfortunately, in July 2005, there was a terrorist attack against London public transport. Nowadays, Britain is ruled by the Conservative Party, with Theresa May as Prime Minister, and Queen Elizabeth II as the Chief of the State. Most of England consists of lowland terrain, divided east from west by more mountainous terrain in the northwest, Cumbrian mountains of the Lake District, and north, the upland moors of the Pennines, and limestone, Pieter Calisa, hills of the Peak District that make up the TZXE Line 1. The lower limestone hills of the Isle of Purbeck, Cotswolds, and Lincolnshire and chalk downs of the southern England chalk formation are also important. The main rivers and estuaries, wide part of a river where it nears the sea, fresh and salt water mix, are the Thames, Severn and the Humber estuary. The largest urban area is Greater London. Near Dover, the Channel Tunnel links the United Kingdom with France. There is no peak in England that is 1,000 meters, 3,300 feet, or higher, being the highest mountain Scafell Pike in England's Lake District, at some 978 meters, 3,208 feet. Scotland * geography is varied, with lowlands in the south and east and highlands in the north and west, including Ben Nevis, the highest mountain in the British Isles at 1,343 meters, 4,406 feet. There are many long and deep sea arms, firths, coastal waters, and KMS. Scotland has nearly 800 islands, mainly west and north of the mainland, notably the Hebrides, Orkney Islands and Shetland Islands. In total, it is estimated that the UK includes around 1,000 islands, with 700 in Scotland alone. The capital city is Edinburgh, although the largest city is Glasgow. Wales, Cymru in Welsh, is mostly mountainous, the highest peak being Snowdon at 1,085 meters, 3,560 feet, above sea level. The largest and capital city is Cardiff. It has been the Welsh capital city since 1955, located in South Wales. The greatest concentration of people live in the south, in the cities of Swansea and Newport, as well as Cardiff, and the South Wales valleys. The largest town in North Wales is Wrexham. Northern Ireland, making up the northeastern part of Ireland, is mostly hilly. The main cities are Belfast, Londonderry / Derry and Armagh. Lough Neagh, the largest body of water in the British Isles, by surface area, 388 square kilometers, can be found in Northern Ireland. The highest peak is Slieve Donald at 849 meters, 2,786 feet. 2.1.1 Cultural background of the United Kingdom. A. Education. Across the UK, there are 5 stages of education: early years, primary, secondary, further education and higher education. Education is compulsory for all children between the ages of 5, for in Northern Ireland, and 16. Further education is not compulsory and covers non-advanced education which can be taken at further, including tertiary education colleges and higher education institutions. The fifth stage, higher education, is studied beyond General Certificate of Education (GCE) levels and their equivalent, which, for most full-time students, takes place in universities and other higher education institutions and colleges. B. Music. Throughout its history, the United Kingdom has been a major producer and source of musical creation, drawing its early artistic basis from church music and the ancient and traditional folk music and instrumentation. The countries of the United Kingdom has its own diverse and distinctive folk music forms, which flourished until the era of industrialization, when it began to be replaced by new forms of popular music, including music hall and brass bands. Many British musicians have influenced modern music on a global scale, and the United Kingdom has one of the world's largest music industries. Global music widely developed by British acts include pop and rock. The British invasion, spearheaded by Liverpool band The Beatles, often regarded as the most influential band of all time, saw British rock bands become highly influential around the world in the 1960s and 1970s. Pop music, a term which originated in Britain in the mid-1950s as a description for rock and roll and the new youth music styles that it influenced, was developed by British artists like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, whom among other British musicians led rock and roll's transition into rock music. C. Sports. Sport in the United Kingdom plays an important role in British culture. The UK has given birth to a large majority of the team sports, including football, field hockey, rugby, tennis, badminton, water polo, etc. Moreover, the standardization of various sports, such as in rowing, dance sports and motorsports, occurred in the United Kingdom. This has meant that in the infancy of many sports, the home nations England, Scotland, Wales and Ireland formed among the earliest separate governing bodies, national teams and domestic league competitions. Overall, association football attracts the most viewers and money, though the nation is notable for the diversity of its sporting interests, especially at the elite level. Major individual sports include athletics, cycling, and motorsports. Tennis is the highest profile sport for the 2 weeks of the Wimbledon Championships, but otherwise struggles to hold its own in the country of its birth. D. Media. The UK has a large and diverse media offer, and the prominence of IHE English language gives it a widespread international dimension. The BBC is the UK's publicly funded radio and television broadcasting corporation, and is the oldest broadcaster in the world. Traditionally, British newspapers could be split into quality, serious-minded newspapers and popular newspapers. The Sun, popular, has the highest circulation of any daily newspaper in the UK. The Daily Telegraph, a right-of-centre paper, is the highest-selling serious paper, having overtaken the Times in circulation figures. The Financial Times is the main business paper, printed on distinctive salmon pink broadsheet paper. E. Cinema. The United Kingdom has had a significant film industry for over a century. The golden age of British cinema is usually thought to have occurred in the 1940s, during which the directors David Lean or Michael Powell produced their most critically acclaimed works. Many British actors have accrued critical success and worldwide recognition, such as Audrey Hepburn, Roger Moore, Michael Caine, Sean Connery, Daniel Day-Lewis, Emma Thompson or Hugh Grant. Some of the films with the largest ever box office returns have been made in the United Kingdom, including the third and sixth highest grossing film franchises, Harry Potter and James Bond. The identity of the British film industry, particularly as it relates to Hollywood, has often been the subject of debate. Numerous British-born directors, including Alfred Hitchcock and Ridley Scott, and performers, such as Charlie Chaplin and Cary Grant, have achieved success primarily through their work in the United States. The annual BAFTA Awards hosted by the British Academy of Film and Television Arts are considered to be the British equivalent of the Oscars, Academy Awards.
2.2 The United States of America. The United States of America is a federal republic formed by 50 states, with 2 legislative houses, the Senate and the House of Representatives. Its capital is Washington, D.C., and its currency the American dollar. Talking about geography, it is the world's 3rd biggest country in the world by land area, after Russia and Canada. USA's geography is very varied, with very well-known places like the Great Plains, the Colorado River, the Grand Canyon, the Rocky Mountains, the Great Lakes, the Niagara Falls, the Mississippi River, or the Yosemite Park, among many others. As regards the people, most of the population was WASP, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, until 1860. Between this date and 1920, about 30 million immigrants arrived in the USA. Black people arrived in America as slaves. This is very important, taking into account that the 44th President of the United States of America, Barack Obama, is a black man, which shows us how this country developed through the years. Nowadays, former president is Joe Biden, who was elected in 2021 after lots of controversy in the country due to his war policies. The most rapidly growing ethnic group is the Hispanics, who are even changing the language, using a mixture between Spanish and English that is called Spanglish. There are also about 2 million Oriental Americans, mainly in California. Besides this, it is important to mention the existence of Indian tribes, especially in the west of the country, being the Navajo the most numerous one. In religious terms, about 55% of the population is Protestant, about 30% Catholics, and there are some Jews and Eastern Orthodox too. Talking about education, it is compulsory from the age of 5, and the same as the British educational system, it is quite similar to the Spanish one. There are very few private schools, and most are state ones. Lots of money is invested in education. The American education system gives lots of importance to sports and learning through discovery. They follow what Albert Einstein quote, "Imagination is more important than knowledge." With respect to culture, the USA has developed several distinctive types of music: jazz, blues, country, and rock and roll. The USA has given birth to some of the most outstanding writers, such as Edgar Allan Poe, Ernest Hemingway, or Arthur Miller. Talking about sports, the national sports are American football, baseball, and basketball. They love practicing sports and gathering together. It is very usual for Americans to go to barbecues, and they are very traditional as regards some celebrations such as Christmas, Thanksgiving's Day, President's Day, or the Independence Day, among others. Let us move now to American history. The Spaniards reached Florida in 1513, though the British were the most successful, establishing their first settlement, Jamestown, in 1607. The country was under the British rule until the 13 colonies in North America declared their independence on July 4, 1776, with George Washington as the first president of the United States of America. The issue of slavery was creating problems between the industrializing North and the South plantations, until President Abraham Lincoln in 1860 advocated the prohibition of slavery, resulting in a civil war. After the Civil War, 1861 to 1865, the Americans developed a sense of union for the first time in their history. They had been fighting for many years, and now they had to reunify and create a renewed identity. This is why they decided to recover the old symbols that had been a part of the American nation, such as the eagle, the Liberty Bell or the flag, and create new ones like the Statue of Liberty as an icon of the United States of America. USA entered the World War I, resulting into a period of prosperity that came to an end in 1929, with the stock crash. In 1941, the Japanese Navy made its attack on Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, which made the USA enter the World War II. Finally, USA got involved into a Cold War with the Soviet Union, 1947 to 1991, which took place after the World War II between capitalism and communism. Nowadays, the USA is one of the most influential countries in the world. It was been attacked on September 11, 2001, by the Islamist terrorists. Barack Obama, the first African-American president, is trying to restore the vision of the Americans created by its precursor, George Bush, as regards terrorism. The term United States, when used in the geographical sense, is the contiguous United States, the state of Alaska, the island state of Hawaii, the 5 insular territories of Puerto Rico, Northern Mariana Islands, U.S. Virgin Islands, Guam and American Samoa and minor outlying possessions. The United States shares land borders with Canada and Mexico and maritime borders with Russia, Cuba, the Bahamas, and other countries in addition to Canada and Mexico. The northern border of the United States with Canada is the world's longest binational land border. Due to its large size and wide range of geographic features, the United States contains examples of nearly every global climate. The climate is subtropical in the southern United States, tropical in Hawaii and southern Florida, polar in Alaska, semi-arid in the Great Plains, Mediterranean in coastal California, and arid in the Great Basin and the Southwest. Its comparatively favorable agricultural climate contributed, in part, to the country's rise as a world power, with infrequent severe drought in the major agricultural regions, a general lack of widespread flooding, and a mainly temperate climate that receives adequate precipitation. The eastern United States has a varied topography. A broad, flat coastal plain lines the Atlantic and Gulf shores from the Texas-Mexico border to New York City, and includes the Florida Peninsula. This broad coastal plain and barrier islands make up the widest and longest beaches in the United States, much of it composed of soft, white sands. The Florida Keys are a string of coral islands that reach the southernmost city on the United States mainland, Key West. Areas further inland feature rolling hills, mountains, and a diverse collection of temperate and subtropical moist and wet forests. Parts of interior Florida and South Carolina are also home to sandhill communities. The Appalachian Mountains form a line of low mountains separating the eastern seaboard from the Great Lakes and the Mississippi Basin. New England features rocky seacoasts and rugged mountains with peaks up to 6,200 feet and valleys dotted with rivers and streams. Offshore islands dot the Atlantic and Gulf coasts. A recent global remote sensing analysis suggested that there were 6,622 square kilometers of tidal flats in the United States, making it the 4th-ranked country in terms of tidal flat area. The 5 Great Lakes are located in the north-central portion of the country, 4 of them forming part of the border with Canada, only Lake Michigan situated entirely within United States. The southeast United States, generally stretching from the Ohio River on south, includes a variety of warm temperate and subtropical moist and wet forests, as well as warm temperate and subtropical dry forests nearer the Great Plains in the west of the region. West of the Appalachians lies the lush Mississippi River Basin, and 2 large eastern tributaries, the Ohio River and the Tennessee River. The Ohio and Tennessee valleys and the Midwest consist largely of rolling hills, interior highlands and small mountains, Yunli marsh and swampland near the Ohio River, and productive farmland stretching south to the Gulf Coast. The Midwest also has a vast amount of cave systems. The Great Plains lie west of the Mississippi River and east of the Rocky Mountains. A large portion of the country's agricultural products are grown in the Great Plains. Before their general conversion to farmland, the Great Plains were noted for their extensive grasslands, from tallgrass prairie in the eastern plains to shortgrass steppe in the western high plains. Elevation rises gradually from less than a few hundred feet near the Mississippi River to more than a mile high in the high plains. The generally low relief of the plains is broken in several places, most notably in the Ozark and Ouachita Mountains, which form the U.S. interior highlands, the only major mountainous region between the Rocky Mountains and the Appalachian Mountains. The Great Plains come to an abrupt end at the Rocky Mountains. The Rocky Mountains form a large portion of the western U.S., entering from Canada and stretching nearly to Mexico. The Rocky Mountain region is the highest region of the United States by average elevation. The Rocky Mountains generally contain fairly mild slopes and wider peaks compared to some of the other great mountain ranges, with a few exceptions, such as the Teton Mountains in Wyoming and the Sawatch Range in Colorado. The highest peaks of the Rockies are found in Colorado, the tallest peak being Mount Elbert at 400 meters. In addition, instead of being one generally continuous and solid mountain range, it is broken up into a number of smaller, intermittent mountain ranges, forming a large series of basins and valleys. West of the Rocky Mountains lies the Intermontane Plateaus, also known as the Intermountain West, a large, arid desert lying between the Rockies and the Cascades and Sierra Nevada ranges. The large southern portion, known as the Great Basin, consists of salt flats, drainage basins, and many small north-south mountain ranges. The Southwest is predominantly a low-lying desert region. A portion known as the Colorado Plateau, centered around the Four Corners region, is considered to have some of the most spectacular scenery in the world. It is accentuated in such national parks as Grand Canyon, Arches, Mesa Verde and Bryce Canyon, among others. Other smaller intermontane areas include the Columbia Plateau covering eastern Washington, western Idaho, and northeast Oregon, and the Snake River Plain in southern Idaho. The Grand Canyon is among the most famous locations in the country. The Intermontane Plateaus come to an end at the Cascade Range and the Sierra Nevada. The Cascades consist of largely intermittent, volcanic mountains, many rising prominently from the surrounding landscape. The Sierra Nevada, further south, is a high, rugged, and dense mountain range. It contains the highest point in the contiguous 48 states, Mount Whitney, 4,421 meters. These areas contain some spectacular scenery as well, as evidenced by such national parks as Yosemite, and Mount Rainier west of the Cascades and Sierra Nevada is a series of valleys, such as the Central Valley in California and the Willamette Valley in Oregon. Alaska contains some of the most dramatic scenery in the country. Tall, prominent mountain ranges rise up sharply from broad, flat tundra plains. On the islands off the south and southwest coast are many volcanoes. Hawaii, far to the south of Alaska in the Pacific Ocean, is a chain of tropical, volcanic islands, popular as a tourist destination for many from East Asia and the mainland United States. 2.2.1 Cultural background of the USA. A. Education. Education in the United States is provided mainly by the government, with control and funding coming from three levels: federal, state, and local. At the primary and secondary school levels, curricula, funding, teaching, and other policies are set through locally elected school boards with jurisdiction over school districts. B. Music. Music in the United States also traces to the country's diverse cultural roots through a variety of styles. Rock and roll, hip-hop, country, blues, and jazz are among the country's most internationally known genres. Jazz originates around the start of the 20th century in New Orleans. It is rooted in Western music technique and theory and marked by the profound cultural contributions of African Americans. Jazz has been described as America's classical music. Since the late 19th century, popular recorded music from the United States has become increasingly known across the world, such that some forms of American popular music are heard almost everywhere. C. Sports. Sports are a national pastime, and playing sports, especially American football, baseball, and basketball, is very popular. The four most important sports are baseball, American football, ice hockey, and basketball. Soccer, called football in most other parts of the world, is a popular participatory sport, especially among children and women, but it does not have a large following as a spectator sport, in contrast to its much greater popularity in other countries. Baseball is often called the national pastime, but since the early 1990s, American football has largely been considered the most popular sport in America. Another popular sport is auto racing, especially NASCAR. D. Art. The Hudson River School was created in the mid-19th century by an American group of landscape painters whose approach was related to Romanticism. Their paintings describe the Hudson River Valley and the surrounding area, as well as the Catskills, Adirondacks, and White Mountains of New Hampshire. The Ashcan School was a realist artistic movement that came into prominence in the early 20th century, best known for works capturing scenes of daily life in poor urban neighborhoods. Andy Warhol, August 6, 1928 – February 22, 1987, was an American artist, avant-garde filmmaker, writer, and social figure. Warhol also worked as a magazine, publisher, music producer, and actor. With his background and experience in commercial art, Warhol was one of the founders of the pop art movement in the 1950s. E. Media. Mass media in the United States consist of several types of media: television, radio, newspapers, magazines, and websites. American media conglomerates tend to be leading global players, generating large revenues as well as large opposition in many parts of the world. Newspapers. The New York Times, The Wall Street Journal, and USA Today are the most circulated newspapers in the United States and are sold in most U.S. cities. Magazines. The U.S. has three leading weekly news magazines: Time, Newsweek, and U.S. News and World Report. Time and Newsweek are center-left while U.S. News and World Report tends to be center-right. Time is well known for naming a person of the year each year. Radio. During the advent of the Internet in the 21st century, Internet radio and digital streaming services have been emerged. Among popular brands are Pandora, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Television. 99% of American households have at least one television, and the majority of households have more than one. The four major broadcasters in the U.S. are the National Broadcasting Company, NBC, CBS, formerly the Columbia Broadcasting System, the American Broadcasting Company, ABC, and the Fox Broadcasting Company, Fox. Internet. The Internet has provided a means for newspapers and other media organizations to deliver news and keep archives public. revenue is generated through advertising or subscription payments. Aside from web portals and search engines like Google and Yahoo, the most popular websites are YouTube, Wikipedia, Facebook, Twitter, Amazon, etc. F. Cinema. The birth of cinema, as well as its development, largely took place in the United States. In 1878, the first recorded instance of sequential photographs capturing and reproducing motion was Edward Muybridge's series of A Running Horse. Since then, the American film industry, based in Hollywood, California, has had a profound effect on cinema across the world. Other genres that originated in the United States and spread worldwide include the comic book and Disney's animated films. (2.3) Australia. Due to time restrictions, only the most outstanding aspects of Australia, Canada, and New Zealand will be mentioned. Talking about Australia, it is the smallest continent, but the sixth largest country in the world. Its capital is Canberra, and its currency is the Australian dollar. The history of Australia records that the first settlers were Aboriginals from Southeast Asia who arrived about 40,000 years ago. The first European explorations did not begin until the 17th century. The first territorial claim was made in 1770 by Captain James Cook, who took possession in the name of the British Empire. Australia became known for its liberal legislation, free compulsory education, women's suffrage, maternity allowances, and sickness and old age pensions. It is important to state that although nowadays Australia is ruled by Malcolm Turnbull, it has previously been ruled by a woman, Julia Gillard, who became the first female Prime Minister in Australia. (2.4) New Zealand. The meaning of New Zealand in the native language, Maori, is Land of the Long White Cloud. The capital city is Wellington. It became a British colony in 1840, and the United Kingdom Parliament gave New Zealand freedom in 1931. Two cultures coexist in New Zealand, the Maori culture and the British one. The Maori people often use the term people of the land to describe themselves in a way that refer to their relationship with the land. The haka is the most famous Maori dance. Nowadays it is performed by the All Blacks team in order to symbolize their status in the World Rugby. The haka has become a unique form of national expression. 2.5 Canada. Finally, the last English-speaking country that we will deal with is Canada. It is the world's second biggest country, after Russia. The capital is Ottawa and the currency the Canadian dollar. The Canadian culture has been greatly influenced by immigration from all over the world. It is a multicultural country, where two languages coexist, French and English. We should look at Canada as a good example of bilingualism, since our governments are trying to promote bilingual sections in our schools.
3. Didactic application of geographic, historic and cultural aspects. The most interesting aspect for children at primary level are festivities and holidays celebrated in English-speaking countries: Easter, Christmas, Guy Fawkes Day, Thanksgiving, Halloween, and so on. Nevertheless, in the following we are going to explain how to organize a cultural week so as to include all the aspects mentioned in the topic. First, we want to say that we only would organize the week for the second and the third cycle to participate. Pupils in the first cycle could be visitors. By means of this cultural week, we want to insist on the importance of English, motivate students to learn this language and show how all the teachers and parents can collaborate. We will spend 2 hours a day, if possible the afternoon ones or the last ones in our morning, to prepare and carry out activities. The final party could be on Friday afternoon or Saturday morning. As far as the organization of activities is concerned, we have thought of the following as the most recommendable. We will divide the different classes in workshops about, e.g., food, history, games, sightseeing, American and British culture, films, songs and dances, videos and so on. To set an example, we will explain what could be done in the workshop about food. The pupils and the teachers could prepare wall charts with pictures of typical British and American dishes and label them. They could be invited to see a video about typical meals at Christmas, Easter and so on. The menu and the signposts in the school's dining room could be written in English. For the final party, they could prepare British and American snacks and lemonades. If they need money to come up for the costs, they could even make a price list. Last but not least, I would recommend my pupils to try to gel material from travel agencies or the embassy. Besides, I think it could be interesting to organize a gymkhana around the school the day we organize the party. In the following we are going to study the experience they had at a public school. This experience was carried out at a rural school where students were little motivated to study English due to the fact that they considered it not useful at all and therefore of no importance comparing it with other subjects in the curriculum. The objectives of this English week, which took place in the first week of May, were the following. Concerning the students: to increase their interest in knowing the English language, to perceive the utility of that language as well in real situations as within their academic formation, to adapt a respectful attitude towards people who speak a different language, to maintain a positive and optimistic attitude concerning one's own ability to learn English, to feel curiosity and respect for aspects of everyday life in the United Kingdom, as an example of an English-speaking country. Concerning the teachers: to favor the coordination among teachers from different cycles, to foment a more attractive and participative way of teaching, to plan activities outside the classroom to make learning more ludic and meaningful, to foment the collaboration of all teachers to work in a team. Concerning parents: to make them see that English is an important part of the curriculum, to participate in activities programmed within school. Among the activities, there was one with a native speaker of English, who was a language teacher as well. The children could talk to him about their private life and about aspects of British society. Besides, they sang typical English songs. We also prepared an exposition which could be visited by all the pupils from infant education to the last grade. This exposition counted on typical products like tea, whiskey, chocolate, marmalade, etc. British money, traditional fairy tales, Snow White, prospects about the United Kingdom, posters about myths and legends, food, music, famous places, etc. All week, in the English lessons too, we played games like bingo, battleship, dance of the ostriches, to practice numbers, the clock, to practice the time, first letter, to practice semantic fields by identifying the first letter of an animal or object. Other activities included watching videos about London, to know a little about its history, the most important buildings, and some curious customs like the change of the guards. Children from the last cycle were invited to sing modern and traditional songs above all to make them enjoy using the English language. What they did. Posters were also made, therefore we used words, labels, instructions of electric appliances and trademarks, all of them written in English, and the overall topic was English around you. Besides, the school was decorated with English items, flags, important buildings, typical buses, bobbies, royal guards, and so on. At break time, they could listen to pop songs. Inside and outside the classroom it was tried to speak in English and not to use the mother tongue. The experience was completed with a study of the United Kingdom, and within the subject, social studies, they studied geographic features, its population, economy, religion, currency and climate. For pupils from infant education and the first cycle, we prepared some crafts activities, cut out, color, paint, and easy songs. The music teacher prepared some typical English, American and Irish dances which were performed in the schoolyard. Children in the third cycle imitated actual pop songs, and after the performance, we had tea and typical sweets, which we had at 5 o'clock. Maybe our students did not learn too much English in this week, but they showed a great level of motivation, illusion and interest, what was one of our main aims. Interest in knowing people from other countries, correspondence with children from other countries, etc. 3.1 How can we teach English civilization? The teacher of a modern language must teach not only the foreign language, but also the civilization of the countries and people who speak that language. Apart from history and geography, our pupils must get familiar politics, mass media, etc. There are 3 different procedures. 1. Interpretative reading. First, we must know the level of the group before planning any activity. There should be a correspondence between the level of the text and the level of the group. Different types of texts. The important result is that they get the signification about the society or social aspects reflected in the text. Example: Journey around the world in 80 days. The typical gentleman. 2 practices of oral expression. We can offer our pupils photographs showing different aspects of British life. They must say whatever they suggest to them. We can use a dramatization of a dialogue, for example, an English breakfast, foods, timetable, courtesy sentences, a tourist visit. We can use postcards or photographs. We can mention Christmas, Thanksgiving Day, American independence. 3. Didactic use of songs. They are a pedagogic support for the teaching of civilization. The songs must have certain characteristics. Correspondence with the level of the pupils. Interesting for the pupils. They can learn some structures with the songs. Before finishing the topic, it is important to highlight the didactic implications of the most relevant geographical, historical and cultural aspects. It is obvious that we should not expect such a detailed knowledge from our students. Referring to primary education, our general aim as far as socio-cultural competence is concerned is to get our pupils to show an understanding attitude towards the English language, its speakers and its culture. Many schools throughout the country are involved in cultural projects with other countries thanks to different programs such as Erasmus Plus or eTwinning, among many others. These cultural exchanges are an excellent tool to establish the first contacts with people from other places and to use the language in context, developing an understanding and tolerant attitude towards other peoples and cultures. Furthermore, it is very interesting to include different cultural activities in our lessons, like for example the so well-known Halloween, Christmas, Pancake Day, President's Day, or any other that can help you grow the student's interest and awareness towards the foreign language and its speakers.
4. Conclusion. As a way of conclusion, it is essential to mention that language cannot be separated from culture, and in our lessons we should have both present. Furthermore, learning a foreign language enriches the individual and broadens his or her cultural life. Nelson Mandela himself said, "If you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. If you talk to him in his language, that goes to his heart." As Brooks points out in his book, as language teachers, we must be interested in the study of culture. If we teach language without teaching at the same time the culture in which it operates, we are teaching meaningless symbols or symbols to which the student attaches the wrong meaning.